So officially, hello and welcome to our online event brought to you by Matchboard in partnership with the BPO Council of Fiji and the Australian government-backed Market Development Facility. Our event is entitled Fiji, a safe haven for contact centre, back office and digital outsourcing, and it'll run for about 1 hour. During this time, we hope to spark your interest and engage you in the conversation around the opportunity to extend your operations to Fiji through outsourced partnerships. We'll be kicking off with a case study presentation by Asia Group, followed by a panel discussion with the leaders of 4 outsourcing companies operating in Fiji. And to conclude, we'll have time for audience Q&A. So just think of your questions as we go along and feel free to type them into the chat room at any point as you think of them. I'm Sharon Melamed, for those of you who don't know, Managing Director of Matchboard, and shortly I'll be introducing our first speaker. But just before I do, and we'll wait for a couple more people, I'll run through some quick housekeeping points. Firstly, we are recording this session. Secondly, if you have internet issues at any point, please just look at the calendar invite where there's a phone number and passcode you can dial in with. Finally, could I ask everyone who's not speaking just to stay on mute until question time to prevent outside noise. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce Anthony Griffiths, CEO of one of Australia's leading building services companies, Asia Group. Anthony is going to present his business's journey outsourcing a variety of functions to Fiji. So over to you, Anthony.
Thanks, Sharon. I'll take Australia's leading any day of the week. Look, yeah, hi everyone. I guess just jumping straight in, as I know time's sort of short. What we do is high volume building services across multiple sectors. So we have a couple of building companies. They focus one's in insurance repairs, the other is in your facility maintenance side of things. We also have a extremely high volume turnover service business in electrical, plumbing, air conditioning and all your other building trades. And then we have a couple of businesses in commercial contracting, plumbing, electrical, and starting into some other areas there, as well as in the restoration sector. So fire and water, smoke damage, in that space, and then a few other bits and pieces tied in between that. All operating is a group of companies with a shared group services sitting in between it all that controls it and holds it together. For us in the offshoring space, we've been now doing that for 11 years. So that started when we were only fairly small, probably about 6 or 7 million a year in revenue. I think it came about because someone told me I couldn't do it and I wanted to prove them wrong. And we started up in the Philippines and we were in the Philippines for 6 years. Noticed a lot of change over there in the way things were run and what happened, pricing of staff turnover, a lot of things in that regard, as well as we were looking to potentially go out on our own and start up our own external office, and found that it was very much locked up over there, that you couldn't even lease space unless you were approved by certain people and they would sign off on what you could and couldn't have. So happened to take a holiday in the Pacific and decided that we should look to head out that way. Initially looked for Vanuatu, was told that that's too expensive and didn't really have anything, and then came across Fiji. So we've now been over in Fiji for just over 5 years. We completely started our team again. So when we left Philippines, I think we had 16 staff. We started completely from 0 staff again in Fiji. We were sort of that committed to it. And it sort of stayed around that 14, 15 mark for the first 4 years. And in the last 1 year, which we switched to Brad, who's on this call, we're now touch and go on the plus 30 staffing side of things. So it's well over doubled in the last 12 months. A lot of different reasons for that, but it's definitely been a lot more of an easy process, which has definitely helped. Sharon, you didn't really give me a timeline, so cut me off when you need to. But basically, for us, we now have a lot of different services operating out of Fiji. So when I sort of talk about high volume, we complete about 10,000 jobs a year. Average cost is fairly small, but it's a lot of paperwork. So as you can imagine, simple things like just setting a job up in your system takes 10 minutes, and that's 20,000 of them a year if you allow for a 50% win rate. Then the amount of invoices coming through the business is a couple of 100,000 a year. And again, because we're not in a high-tech, high-educated sectors, and a lot of the time we're dealing with things that can't be automated using software in the invoicing space. So our entire finance team, excluding one full-time finance manager in Australia and a part-time CFO, for the entire group now, we'll be just over 80 million in rev this year. Our entire finance team is in Fiji, including an accountant. Our entire admin team is over there, and then we're starting to get into the specific side in other areas where we've got shared IT that we have with Brad. We have project managers, project coordinators. We have a 24-hour call centre for service work. Basically anything that is an entry-level to mid-level role in Australia is now running out of Fiji. Our expectation is that our staff levels will go to 50 in the next 12 months. Our problem at the moment is office space, and that's not Brad's fault. That's something that we've created because we're located separately. We've kind of got them sitting on top of each other at the moment, and we need to open that up. But for us, look, quite a journey. Obviously, we've learned a lot over the years. The process associated with it has changed our business for the better. Because I believe when outsourcing is done properly, it's not just taking stuff offshore, it's full systemization and process mapping of your business. We have thousands upon thousands of processes that are documented online and that are updated daily. And that is how our entire business operates. If you need to log into your email, you can log in and find out how to do it, or right through to the extreme of how do you process invoices, how do you deal with the call that's from a certain area. All process mapped out and all run out of Fiji. And these days our training coordinator is actually in Fiji as well. Entirely Fiji team. We have no expats over there. And in the 11 years we've done it, we've never had expats running it. I can see the advantage if you were going to ramp up quickly. But then ramping up quickly is not what I would recommend to anyone anyway. So, look, there's huge amounts that I could sort of run through from the journey we've been on. If I've still got Sharon, got another minute or two maybe. I guess I thought some of the questions might be why I moved from the Philippines to Fiji. For me, it's closer, 3.5 hours out of Brisbane. The other side to it was I could take the family. I was quite happy. Manila's a fun place on your own, but it's not somewhere that you feel overly comfortable all day, every day with family, a full day to get there, all of that side. If I go now, we're actually based out of Suva. I'll leave the family in Nandi and I'll head down and they'll have a few days there without me, and then I'll come back up and we meet them that way. The cost was equivalent, and that was 5 years ago. We were having staff poached in the lift when we were in the Philippines. Basically, they put bounties on the head of staff. Bring a new staff member, we'll pay you $500. So they would switch jobs every other week for someone else to get the bounty. So we wanted to go somewhere where we could build a team and a culture, and we're not about plugging people in and plugging them out. We want people to stay, and some of our team have been with us for the full 5 years. We've already been in Fiji. A better interaction, both with our staff, with everyone else. When we're in the Philippines, we're in a 30-story high-rise. We were lucky if we could talk to the manager of that floor, let alone the building, the estate, or the network, where through the connections in Fiji, you can talk to the head of whoever you need to in Fiji to get something done. So that's been a big thing for us. Simple stuff, you've got the traffic, pollution, time, all those other problems with the Philippines that we found, that goes away with Fiji completely. And look, there was other side to it in that after doing trips to Vanuatu and Fiji, there was that feeling that I would rather support countries closer to Australia, more aligned with Australia, than shipping the money off into Asia that way. And I know in the time we've been there, we've seen some of our staff buy their first car. One of them bought their first home. putting kids through school. So we felt a little bit more warm and fuzzy doing that in the Pacific than we did into Asia. And so that was something of an upside for us. And we could access, I said before, access the right people, which is a huge thing. If there's a problem with internet, if there's a problem with phones, if there's a problem with a staff member, we can get hold of all the right people all the time. And that was a big issue we had in the Philippines on the other side. So that's probably the main reason for the switch. It's a vital part to our business now. We've made the mistake, a story I've told a few times, of we missed a public holiday. We didn't realise we'd given them all the public holiday off over there and it wasn't one here. And our business basically shut down for the day because all the fundamentals of everything we do is done in Fiji now. And most staff don't realise how reliant and how well educated in our systems and processes they are. And so that was a mistake that we obviously won't make again. It's the people's huge. Some of the staff I've had, like when you're offshoring, we've got 150, 160 staff. A lot of them are always worried to talk direct to the CEO. I've had staff in Fiji, they'll ring me just to talk about the rugby, or they'll ring me just to have a chat. And it was a very different dynamic than I was used to, and something that I like our staff to have is that friendly nature. My staff, when they go over to Fiji, hang out with our staff, they go hiking, they'll go to dinner at their house, and it's a very communal interaction that happens the whole time. So from us, that's the Fiji way, and that's how we want our company to be associated and to be represented. So that's probably it. The big thing, we switched to Brad's company a year ago from another bigger firm out of Suva. We were just looking to be more than just a number, and their product didn't really suit us, and that's where Brad's business did suit us a lot more, and we're a lot more hands-on than a lot of people. We know what we want. We want to be more involved, and he's been able to open the door for us that way. So that's probably it from me at this stage, Sharon, but happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for all those insights, Anthony. And it's a great success story for Fiji. I will ask people just to hold their questions till we've done the panel discussion coming up, but everyone can actually type in questions in the chat room at any time before you forget them. So now we're going to move to the panel, and it's my great pleasure to introduce our 4 panelists. Firstly, we have Anthony Kassar, who is the Managing Director of Centacom, Brad Russell, Director of Our Pacific Office, Fayaz Khan, General Manager of Grey Mouse, and Scott Hancox, Director of Pack Leader Group.
How are you?
Hey, and so I'm going to kick off the discussion with a question to Anthony, which is quite direct. Why should Australian businesses consider Fiji versus other countries for their outsourcing needs? Anthony.
Thank you, Sharon, and thank you everyone for joining us today. It's a great question, and I think, not sure if Anthony left me very much to say there, because he covered a lot of the points. But if I could, first of all, proximity is important, and not just that is in time zone, in distance. It's not very far to fly to Fiji, but also culturally. Being quite close neighbours in the Pacific, we've both got a Commonwealth history in the Commonwealth. English is an official language in Fiji, one of 3, but still it's an official language, and it's and everyone speaks it, and which they've got a pretty neutral accent. If you want to use that term to compare maybe against some other locations. So that cultural connectivity, I think, is important. It's not just one way in terms of them understanding us, because many Australians have been to Fiji, but we also understand them. And not just from a language standpoint, but many Australians have had that, they've got that familiarity with having been to Fiji before and experienced their strong service culture. So that is not just for tourism, it blends quite well into the business world, And I think there's some very strong positives of what attracts Australian and New Zealand companies and other companies around the world to come to Fiji. And that we're hopeful in this COVID world that Fiji, because of that proximity, and it's been an island that's been able to manage the trials and tribulations quite well. We're hopeful that it'll be one of the places where you can travel to and do what Anthony suggested, which is have a holiday at the same time as checking on your staff operation there. It's competitive cost-wise, and you've also got a highly educated workforce. The Fijian government has pumped a lot of money into free education, and you've got a lot of highly educated in terms of tertiary education is a mainstay of their educational structure. So it might not be a university degree, but it will be some kind of tertiary education, usually attained in a university, whether it be a diploma or something like that. So that, without taking all the points, that'd be the main points of why people I see come up to Fiji.
Yeah, well, that's certainly a long list of reasons for people to consider Fiji. Maybe I'll just ask one other panelist, Scott, would you have anything to add to that in terms of the Fiji value proposition?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sharon and Anthony made some good points. Look, to reiterate, obviously proximity, time zones, travel times, culture, price, educated levels are extremely high. Connectivity is another very big point. The Pacific, the Southern Cross pipeline, which links Australia and New Zealand to the US and beyond, goes directly through Suva, and it services the whole of the Fiji Islands, indirectly and directly. So that's another very good point. Me personally, in my experience over the last 7 years, with 7 years, almost 8 years now, I've been interacting with Fiji. I went there for my honeymoon, so I have an affiliation with the island nation anyway. But what we've done over the journey is quite extraordinary. We've got a 700-seat call centre over there. It's got a very broad offering from vertically integrated with our businesses in Australia, and outsourced to a number of large telcos and energy companies in Australia. And what we've been able to stress test is, which supports what Anthony said, was why Fiji, or what the question is masked as. We've had on the hop requirement to deliver chat services, tech support, customer care, and their speed to competency is quite remarkable. They're a resilient bunch, the Fijians, and what I really noticed, and I've had similar experience to what Anthony had earlier with references to Manila, so why Fiji over Manila and maybe India. It's a boutique offering. It's a small island nation. There is enough staff there, quality staff there, and they tend to spend a little bit more time in getting to know the client and building that rapport. And often when you've got challenging scenarios with regards to whatever task it is that you're setting the agents to do, if you've got that level of rapport which has been built, I just find the speed to competency, which is my experience, is a lot more favourable than in other regions. Now, I've been in the direct sales industry for some 35 years. We've been incorporated in Fiji for coming on 7 now. Have offices in Manila, and we've had them in India before, but I have a different fondness for the Fiji Islands. As I mentioned before, honeymoon, family trips, I can mix pleasure with working there. I can bring the family over. It's not too far away. I can jump in a plane. Our friends in Queensland and Sydney are a little bit more, have a huge benefit because they don't have the extra travel time or travel time that we do. But look, all in all, it's a really great place to operate, and it is competitive. It's competitive not only on price, which seems to be the driver with any business trying to outsource, but it's the relationship which you can build, the duty of care which the operators forward to our clients. So obviously we highly recommend it because we own and operate there, but the experience has been wonderful myself, and listening to my colleagues, it sounds as though they can mirror that experience.
Thanks so much, Scott. And just on the cost competitiveness, my understanding is that for 10 to 15 Australian dollars an hour, you can buy a fully managed service or talent pool for virtually any front or back office task. Would you agree with that, Scott?
Oh, look, definitely. And the thing I noticed that most of the operations, there's there's small and medium-sized operators in Fiji. It's a boutique offering. And through that, it's our experience, well, definitely from my organisation, Pack Leader Group, and some of the other panellists here, the flexibility that's forwarded to clients is definitely welcomed. You can go from the lower end, a fully managed operation, and it can be any service from financial services to technical support or customer service or whatever the task is, even debt, whatever, or sales. There'll be a range of pricing that we all agreed on the panel to put in a post between $10 and $15, but that can be right down to $10 where the client would prefer to do the management themselves and they just pretty much rent a seat and the services offering, and it's more like an HR service or an HR process to handle staff members abroad, or then you've got a higher charge which is more hands-on and you've got very skilled senior staff management overlooking and running the day-to-day operations.
Okay.
So
yeah.
It offers flexibility.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned sales and service. I'd like to ask the other panelists, what is the range of work types that can be delivered from Fiji for Australian clients? And maybe I'll start with Brad, if you don't mind, just sharing with us your thoughts there.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. And just to reiterate what Scott and Anthony and the other Anthony has said to date, it's something that when we started this business, we started back in 2015. I've been in Fiji since 2012, and have the talent that's come along through those years is been quite astounding. If you think about what Anthony just said to us before, from his experience, he's pretty well outsourced his entire back office to Fiji. So that's a pretty big tick for Fiji to be able to be to deliver the results. Along the thing that I actually see is I refer to them as urbanized Fijians. So they're kids that are coming out of the education system that are highly educated. They're ready to go. But the availability to job is really, it just hasn't been there, and that was one of the sole reasons we started the business. It was an opportunity to get people working again, or give them an opportunity outside of tourism. Tourism's obviously very strong here, but and we've had a lot of success in that, to see roles that these kids have come out, they're educated in certain areas, and we've been able to place them into those areas and deliver for the clients abroad. To give you just some idea, we've got the things that we look after: general administration support, staffing, so payroll processing, recruitment support, reservations. So if you're getting into the tourism side of things, reservations, we've had a lot of success with that across not just myself, but I can speak for all my colleagues that are in the panel today. There's, in particular, airline industries, we've done very, very well. Some major airline companies that we look after here. Your normal, sale, you've obviously sales, your outbound, inbound sales, conversational work, upselling, assistants, basically PAs, executive personal assistants, office reception, doing appointment setting, that type of thing. We have a major recruitment company that we look after here that are, vetting all the applications, even down to actually job placement there, so it's quite a range of different things that can be done. I often say, in Fiji, if a company is here and it's got its back office support that's doing just the normal day-to-day things for a Fiji company, then we can obviously offer that same service to a company overseas. And I also, Faiz, who's also on the panel, I believe you've got some other roles you'd like to mention, Faiz?
Yeah, thanks for that, Brad, and thank you everyone for joining us today. And yeah, just to I think add on to some of the services that that could be, like, or that are being delivered from Fiji by the various BPO companies here. Like that would include like IT managed services is one of them, where like the IT help desk, or even if you need like NOC or monitoring services, or level 1, level 2, level 3 engineers, setting up voice systems or soft phones, etc. That can be done. Web administration as well. And then moving on to like from IT background into something else, like finance and an accounting perspective. So bookkeeping or payment related activities, like looking after AP, AR, collections, debt recoveries, and like basic accounting functions, reconciliations, etc. And then up to like best lodgements is done from Fiji as well. Like we've got some providers who do that from Fiji. So yeah, that's quite big range of services in that area as well, that can be like shifted across to Fiji. And then in terms of like compliance, looking after quality assurance and auditing, or surveys as well. And then if you are looking into like marketing activities as well, like doing research or surveys, or like doing some tweaks on your websites, like graphic designing, branding, or video editing, transcriptions, or even designing websites or doing maintenance for them. Even we've got social media specialists around here as well, looking after active campaign management, or know your customer services. So these are some of the marketing activities that can be looked after from Fiji as well. And then if you've got some like customer service side of things as well, so looking after like complaints or inquiries as well, that can be facilitated in terms of customer service. And then there are some specialist services as well that are being done, like loyalty programs, organizing trade or export support, crisis management, or like during disruptions, planning or redundancy. So these are some broad areas. And like if you are looking into going into specific, so like there are other providers. So like if like Scott, you want to add something in here from your experience as well.
Great. Well, that was certainly a comprehensive view, Fayaz and Brad, of all those different types of work we can.
I was muted then. Sorry, go on, Sharon.
Look at from Fiji. Did you want to have a couple of quick points to add, Scott, on that one before we move on to the next
I think it's
item?
just honing on the services, and I can just speak on what services that we've run from our centre in Suva, and that is a chartered accounting business servicing a lot of businesses across the entire nation of Australia. Technical support for a very large telco, one of the main 3 telcos in Australia, and we've had over 100 staff on that, servicing tech support, customer care, financial transactions. So there's a full range of products that can be serviced from Fiji. It's what we really need to hone in on.
Sounds like there's virtually nothing that cannot be done from Fiji.
Haven't found it yet.
Yeah, okay, great. So when companies decide to go offshore, I guess they have a choice of a few different models. Well, they could set up on their own, they could fully outsource and get a managed service, or maybe something in between. I'd be curious to hear how Fiji has evolved with the different models that are available to clients. And I might actually start with Brad on that one. Could you tell us, at least from your perspective, what models are available to Australian businesses? Yes,
sure. Thanks, Sharon. So obviously the main one's your fully managed model. Obviously it's very successful here. Some of the things that we've got involved with, and Anthony's spoken about it before, so that's quite a unique situation where they self-manage. So basically we do everything contractual for them, but very much because Anthony's had that experience in Fiji. So he's been able to successfully utilize our services so we do everything, anything contractual, anything around human resources to make sure that everything's being adhered to the labour law and that type of thing. So that's certainly been a very successful model. I mean, you know, as Anthony said, he's over the 30 mark now, and when they joined us 12 months ago, there was only 15 staff. So it's been, you know, and as I said in my last discussion piece, you know, you don't do that unless you're getting success from it. One model that we really encourage is to basically give that client that real kind of engagement with their staff. So we're there to make sure that everything is happening on a day-to-day basis. The staff are turning up, they're doing the job, we've assisted with the recruitment, but we really basically make them an extension of the team of our client. So, you know, for example, you could have your headquarters in Sydney, and instead of having a branch up in Brisbane, you've got a branch in Fiji. So it's just an extension of your headquarters, so to speak. So, and some of the things that we see in that situation, daily kickoff meetings with the staff. So it's just like you would if you had Sydney and Melbourne meeting. Now you've got Sydney, Melbourne, and Fiji meeting, and talking about what you're going to do for the day and get through it. And it basically giving the staff here to really take on the culture of the client and the company. So even though they're employed and everything contractual, their employment contracts with us, our client feels as they're actually their team member. So they really take that ownership over their own staff, even down to wearing their uniforms and as I said, taking on that company culture. That certainly, when we're out talking to new clients that have approached us, they love hearing that.
Okay, thanks, Brad.
Yeah.
So I think that sounds like a model that would suit companies that really want to maintain control and really just want another satellite office in their network that they can call their own. Yeah.
Yeah, it's working in partnership. It's, you know, yes, they're the client, but we're working as a partner to get the end result, which is, you know, more sales or you know, the more results type thing. So yeah, it certainly works very successfully.
And so just to be very specific, so your company would provide the infrastructure, the office space, the workstation, the payroll processing. Are those the main things? And then the rest would be under the management of the client itself?
Yeah, good question. So basically, I mean, you can take it. So with AZA, it's taken all the way. So they completely self-manage. With our clients based in our head office in Nandi in the west, we're still there holding the hand of the client along the way. So we will make sure that obviously all the staff are turning up, they're doing their job, but they're very much, we allow the client to really take some ownership over their team. And they look upon them as their team. So if that team member, for example, if another client approached us to do another campaign or another role, we would not take them from one client and move them to the other, because you know what I mean? Like they're contracted to do the work of that client.
Okay, that's a good point. Okay, Scott, would you like to comment on any other models that are available to clients in Fiji? Just hop off the mute.
Sorry, how about that? I think we've covered most of the models. I just want to reiterate that it's the boutique offering in Fiji and the relationship building, and I've heard that it's the happiest place on the earth. I'm not sure. I think it's the most content. But they tend to be able to offer some flexibility and arrive at a very good scenario for a new team or a business or a person that's outsourcing to Fiji. They can, through compromise and negotiation and the way that they operate in Fiji, and come up with a really good price model that suits people.
Right. Okay. And just on pricing models, you just mentioned, do the Fiji vendors offer a range of models where, you know, let's say it's sales, which I know your company does a lot of, there is a performance component that you will take risk in the pricing frameworks?
Look, we've operated. I would no, I'm not going to speak alone. Most people don't like a success model because the risk is borne by the operator. But yes, we've operated with a risk model where it's all on the onus of the sales the outsourced vendor to produce, and they only get paid for success. So that is one model, a click for or pay for success fee, and an hourly rate model plus incentive, or just a pure hourly rate model.
Okay, hourly rates for the managed service model.
Or sales as well.
Yeah. Okay, so it sounds like Fiji covers the full spectrum of models that are available in other big countries like the Philippines.
We've been lucky enough to peg our services against other centres in both Manila and India and that was for Vodafone Australia. And we always came up trumps against those two areas more consistently than not. So I have to reiterate, they're very good at selling Fijians. Now, one of the chat messages that came up, someone asked the question, I think, was it Brendan or was it Derek?
Yeah, Brendan, I think.
Which I'm doing to steal your thunder, Sharon. I'm sure you're going to go through the questions on chat in a minute. But they're very good at sales, and that's been our experience. We entered into the Fiji market with sales teams, and they've not let us down. So they're very good at it.
Okay, brilliant, and perhaps surprising for some people to learn that. I'm just going to have one more question for the panel because I do want to open it up to the audience questions. So that last question would be around COVID-19, of course. We have to ask that. So what's been Fiji's response to COVID-19, and were Australian or other overseas clients affected by any disruption to operations? Anthony, could I start with you?
Sure, thank you, Sharon. And I do see there's one of the questions is from Derek, I think, has also put that out there. And to use Derek's wording there, is I think what COVID has been managed very well in Fiji. Obviously, it's got some natural positives to help it through that, and vis-a-vis it's an island, but it's also means that you've got a lot of international visitors potentially to bring it in. So Fiji has a very good public infrastructure in terms of, and that was utilised and managed to keep the numbers down. What that has meant has been that you have had a very long period now with no community transmission. They've got, as part of that public infrastructure, they've got a very good quarantine infrastructure that was utilised immediately. They never actually went into lockdown, which was great. They utilised curfews and sectioning off different parts of the island when they did have an initial outbreak, at the very beginning, and managed that very well. And the contact tracing and so on was all managed in a way that they managed to put people into the quarantine as soon as, and get a handle on it very quickly. That, together with stopping international flights, means that they're in a very good position moving forward. But to answer your initial question, is we didn't have any downtime. I mean, COVID has affected everyone, their businesses in Australia and so on. But we were able, we've had no downtime at all, and we were able to manage to set up home-based consultants for nighttime. To work around the curfew, and the IT infrastructure in Fiji is certainly robust enough to, and it was a good test, because to be frank, we hadn't utilised that home-based model before in Fiji, but we adapted very quickly, and we didn't have any downtime whatsoever, and it's been pretty much business as usual, albeit without having tourism flights and so on. Business from the outsourcing perspective has continued. And look, I think it also speaks to the resilience of the Fijians as a people. We, like Brad, also specialise in, one of our big areas that we manage is for travel companies and airlines, and we take phone calls and contacts, emails and so on, web chat 24/7. So my point is that Fijians have been used to managing disruptions in the past. They do have some weather events that, Cyclone Winston, which was a few years ago now, that was a big test for the IT infrastructure and so on, and we managed to operate completely through that, and then got hit with another weather event a few months later, and again had no downtime. So the Fijians are very resilient, and they have managed this whole COVID disruption very well. And again, it's put them in a very strong position moving forward. Also, I think an important point is that when there was those initial restrictions, I think it was a good 200 days ago now, the Fijian government designated contact centres and ICT businesses as essential services. So even if there was an effect and so on some movements of the population, it didn't affect the contact centre industry. The government sees it as a crucial and essential service. So through all that, they've managed very well. And again, I think I've touched on it before, hopefully they'll be one of the first countries up and running in terms of having travel rights to and from Australia and New Zealand. So yeah, like I said, it's been tough for everyone, but I think Fiji has certainly weathered it better than most.
Okay, so fingers crossed for that travel bubble. Fayaz, we have just a very short time. Would you like to add anything to that before we move to Q&A regarding COVID? And just
yeah, thanks, Sharon. I think Anthony has covered that question really well and almost covered everything that I think needed to be added there. But just to add on from our experience, like initially when there was a small outbreak, and then there was like a portion of Fiji that were under lockdowns just to contain the cases within that area. I think like and curfews and things were coming in place. So what we did, like as a proactive measure, what we did is we mobilized part of our team as well to work from home, and that too even worked. And then we had, like a team from working from office and a team working from home simultaneously. So it was all working well, and like we have a very good ICT infrastructure as well. So that actually helped. And yeah, we didn't had any downtimes, nor we we let the clients down as well. So yeah, it worked really well, and now we are like kind of quite controlled, and we just have a few border related cases, but we're doing good. And I think we are just waiting for the borders to open so we can go on a bigger scale. Yeah, thanks,
fantastic.
Sharon and Anthony. Yep.
Yeah, and just on that question of scale, we're going to move to the audience questions now, and one of them was about that. Derek asks, I've heard the term boutique destination a few times for Fiji. Does this mean Fiji works better for smaller centres and smaller operations? What would be the upper limit in scale that Fiji can comfortably accommodate? And I'm going to throw that question to Scott, because I know you mentioned the word boutique yourself.
Yeah, no, good question, Derek. By no means is Fiji boutique in size. We've got a 600+ seat call centre, and we have had different campaigns well over the 100 mark multiple times. As far as large centres are concerned, with regards to the multinational IBM, the really big brands, you might be hard pressed to put 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 seats into Suva, but I haven't stress tested yet. What I reiterate with boutique means it's a boutique offering with regards to the management process, with regards to hand-holding a client and bringing them through, which is often lost in translation when dealing with a larger multinational centre, but they still have the service behind it. So it's more not trying to take away from the size of campaigns that could be handled in Fiji, because I know personally the ones that we handle, the large brands, AAA, AA rated companies in Australia, and some of our competitors or colleagues in Suva and Nandi, they're doing the same thing for other industries, travel industry, very large multinational brands. It's more boutique with regards to the service that is being delivered to the onboarding and the ongoing management. Hope that helps.
Yeah, that's good, Scott. I can just add to that from Matchboard's perspective. We've seen quite a few clients who've got operations in Philippines and India particularly, and not saying they want to move everything to Fiji, but from a risk diversification perspective, they are happy to put a small pocket or a specific work type in Fiji, just to manage the risk of things like big weather events, what we saw with the pandemic and the impact of that with lockdowns in other countries. And so it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I think there is that trend to splitting up the work, by big companies and having 2 or 3 locations offshore. So that's just something I would add. So we'll look at another question we had from Jay Westbury. What is the feedback like from customers who call Fijian call center staff, and how people, and in particular Australians, feel about that? Is there any data on this? How robust, oh, this is another question. How robust is the banking network in Fiji? Are there local and international banks operating in Fiji? And we did have at a similar event to this a couple of weeks ago, ANZ Bank speaking as a case study of how they've successfully established quite a significant operation in Fiji, supporting not only the domestic market there, but also the Australian head office and other Pacific countries. But the initial question there from Jay around how Australians react to a Fijian call center agent, maybe Anthony, I could throw that to you.
Yes, look, thank you, Jay, for asking that question. Great question. But we've had very good feedback from people interacting with our call center, contact center agents. And if I can be specific, is one of the clients that we look after is Fiji Airways. A huge amount of the phone calls and contacts we get are from Australia and New Zealand. And you know, there's, as I mentioned before, it's quite a neutral accent, and there's a sort of, it's probably closer to a New Zealand accent than Australian, but there is that familiarity there. In fact, you know, one of the things that I say if I'm pitching for business is, hand on heart, if you want to test it out, call the Fiji Airways number, and you can hear it for yourself. So you know, I don't need to send out call recordings and so on. We're that confident of that familiarity with Australian New Zealanders with the Fijian agents that we can say that. So as far as the banking side of it goes, I think Sharon mentioned before, you've got I think you've got ANZ has actually got a very large data processing or back office and contact center set up in Fiji. So I think that's quite a ringing endorsement of Fiji, and because it's not just the Fijian work they do there, they do work there from their banking network throughout the Pacific in Australia and New Zealand. So I'm not sure if I've nailed that question, but certainly you've got those banks that you can utilize there as well if you're doing business there and so on from an outsourcing perspective. If I
can I just add a little bit more onto that, Anthony, and well answered, by the way. Just on one of our first client that joined us back in 2017, they're an airport transfer company in Australia, and he had a call center, exactly what Sharon said before, in the Philippines. He also had one in Queensland, and then he wanted to diversify and have, you know, share the risk around and have one in Fiji. And I said to the CEO straight up, I said, so what happens if they ask where I've called? And he said, well, first off, just say you're an extension of the Australian call center, because that'll get rid of the majority of the inquiry. I said, yeah, but what if they drill? And he said, if they drill down, don't lie. Tell them that you're in Fiji. And I said, you know, the majority of the time they're going to turn around and go, wow, what's the weather like? So when we first started, that's all we could hear, going, it's actually quite sunny out there, you know. So it is like, it's the familiarity with Fiji from, in particular, out of the Australian and New Zealand market. There's a love for the people and a love for the country. So it just really combines well. The other thing I wanted, the quality of voice is incredible here, up against other locations around the world. That voice is something that, you know, we've had some other owners of BPOs in Philippines visit our office, and straight away I heard, straight up, he just turned around and said, wow, listen to the voice. You know, the voice is really, really good. So yeah, so just to add on to what Anthony said, the other, just from a banking point of view, there's also Bread Bank here, which isn't necessarily well known down in this part of the world, but it's bigger than the Australian banks. It's a major European bank, so that is also set up out of Fiji as well.
Interesting. We've got another question about time zone. Obviously, just with the 1 hour difference. It's very favorable for Australian businesses serving the Australian market. But there's a question which is really around 24/7 operations. If an Australian business has clients in the UK, Americas, and other areas, is Fiji able to support a 24/7 operation, and does that impact hourly rates, for example, because of penalties, shift penalties like we have here in Australia? Anthony's put up his hand for that one.
Well, I'll just answer it from our personal perspective, because it's a good question. So what we do, look, yes, the penalty rates do exist in Fiji. They're not to the extent that you've got in Australia and New Zealand. But the way we manage it is with, when you're taking on a full serviced or full-time contract with us, we tend to common rate. So we do handle absolutely all of us can handle 24/7, but we tend to common rate that. So if we give a per hour rate somewhere between 10 and 15, as you mentioned before there, Sharon, depending on the skill set and type of servicing, it doesn't matter whether it's on a weekend or whether it's on in the middle of the night or regular hours, we common rate that. But I'll preface that with also, but if you're using a shared service model, which we also offer, if you need someone full-time at nighttime, but you only need full-time and daytime and part-time at nighttime, then that might be a different rate, right? If you're just cherry picking when you want the service done. But if you're taking it on a full-time basis, we common rate. It's the same rate, nighttime, daytime, after hours, or whatever.
Okay, thanks so much, Anthony. We've got a question about talent attraction. Actually, Matty, perhaps you could unmute yourself and just qualify what you meant here. Are they attracting Australian talent? Are they finding people are making the move? And I assume you mean an expat person going over there to set up?
That's exactly what I mean. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. And obviously this is all contingent on COVID and flight availability.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, amongst the 4 BPO operators on the panel, are there examples where you had Australian clients and you had 50 people putting up their hand to go over and manage the Fiji transition, or was it a hard ask? I think I know the answer to that.
Who would you like to answer that?
Scott, would you like to answer that one?
Yeah, we've had a very favourable response from all our clients in Australia. They tend to put up their hand rather quickly, and they've thoroughly enjoyed it. They do get the welcome and the farewell songs. They get gifts from the Fiji team, and they enjoy going and kicking back in either the GPH or the Holiday Inn of an evening after a long day's work, and they thoroughly enjoy it. So clients, they love the proximity, they love the time zone, and it's easy to fill seats. Okay,
I hope that answers your question, Maddie.
Yeah, I guess I'm more interested in understanding if people have made a permanent move.
Yeah, I can answer as well. We have had expats. We had the GM Luke Wiley that has overseen our operation for the last 7 years. He relocated there with his wife and 4 children, well, 3 at the time, and then he had 4. And he was there for 5 years. We've had Filipino senior managers that we've shipped over and also run it. And currently, I think it was Anthony said it earlier, or Brad, currently we don't have an expat operating in Fiji. The Fijians locally manage it.
Okay.
If that answers the question, sorry, Maddie.
Yeah, it does. I was just very, I guess I haven't heard too much about Fiji, so I was really interested in kind of understanding whether expats kind of transition over in the management type roles.
There's a lot there. Previously to one of the other chat questions regarding banking, ANZ and Westpac have rather large locations in Suva. I think one of them's got over 1,000 staff, and they're servicing a lot of Australian customers through their own banking requirements. And there's a lot of expats in Suva, definitely for the consulate as well, because it's the main hub for the whole South Pacific. So you get a lot of expats living in, it's quite the metropolitan city.
Thanks, Scott.
That sounds very appealing.
Being very generous.
Maddie, you'll get a call later.
Yeah.
That's it. we got another question about cost from Derek. Anthony mentioned Fiji was cost equivalent to the Philippines about 5 years ago. Does this mean Fiji is now more or less cost effective to the Philippines and more broadly against other offshore destinations like India and South Africa? Anthony, what would you say to that?
Well, look, I'd say that we are very cost competitive, and that has been maintained over time. Look, one of the drivers for us as a contact center business, we have another contact center in Europe, and it was originally a low cost base for us, but over a 10-year period, and it's more than 5 years ago, the wages doubled in a 10-year period, and it actually made it not that competitive. And that was one of the reasons why we looked at Fiji, and that was over 6 years ago now. And in that time frame, no, we've definitely maintained cost competitiveness. And one of my points that I wanted to put across was they haven't had that crazy wage growth that we've had in our other centre in Europe, which is Malta, but that's another story. But they haven't had that crazy wage growth. And I think it was mentioned earlier before that that there's not a huge amount of these jobs for these highly trained and educated workforce. So and I'm not sure if it's been mentioned, but the call center jobs there are seen as a great white collar job to have. We've got that less turnover happening for staff, less turnover because we really cherish those roles. But to answer your original question, it still remains cost competitive, probably even more so now if you take into those issues of having cost parity is actually going to cost you more.
Yeah, we have availability on the Tuesday.
Sorry, Daniel Stowe, could you go on mute? Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it remains cost competitive, if that answers your question, even though I've been a bit long-winded about it.
And I think the bottom line is, we talked earlier about hourly rates being in the $10 to $15 range Australian, would have to put it in the highly competitive range vis-a-vis the Philippines and other countries. So, and just one last question that came into me was around exchange rate fluctuations. So I assume that the BPOs invoice Australian clients in Australian dollars, and what happens if there's fluctuation with the Fiji currency? Is that risk typically passed on to clients? Just raise your hand if you'd like to answer that one on the panel there.
Well, I'll jump in. Not that I want to monopolise the answering of questions, but look, we've tended to wear the risk. We invoice in Australian dollars to Australian companies and New Zealand dollars for New Zealand companies. We find that's more palatable. And we haven't had an issue with any wild fluctuations. And I guess at the end of the day, we've just worn it. As a company, we just think it's better for the customer to have that certainty about what they're going to be paying. So that's
okay.
how we've managed it. I'm not sure, I can't speak for other people on the panel, but we bill Australian companies in fixed Australian dollars. We don't, we wear that exchange risk.
Okay, fantastic. And the very last question I'm going to ask is from Natalie. Any of the panelists can raise their hand for this one. What about staff entitlements in Fiji, like health insurance cover, allowances? Scott, I can see you turned off mute. Oh, now you're back.
No, I can answer if you want to.
Yeah.
Our staff entitlements, we along with all our colleagues, I'm sure, adhere to all the local requirements with regards to holiday entitlements, sick leave, health. We cover health for a lot of people on their contracts as well. We honour the Fiji local public holidays, and then they often have to work through those because they align themselves with Australian public holidays, so you get them in lieu. And their redundancy packages, which an outsourced customer wouldn't really need to concern themselves about because it's the onus is back on the outsourcer. So we have to maintain our requirements locally. So I don't think it's any sort of additional cost for anyone outsourcing to Fiji. And it's the same with currency, just what Anthony said before. And the only thing is I've seen the currency increase somewhat over the last 5 years. Fiji is more expensive, but I have to agree with Anthony. We haven't seen any sort of wage hike like I've seen in other regions.
Brilliant. Okay.
Just one more thing. I mean, it's a great question that we've got around that corporate responsibility. And look, we find that asked a lot because, you know, people are like, oh, we don't want to outsource to a sweatshop. And we're very proud of the premises we've got. And I'm sure the same goes for all those people on the panel. We've got water views from our office. You know, it's nice and spacious desks. As Scott said, they're provided with medical. We bus them home at night times. They've, you know, and there's staff incentive programs. We put a lot into those elements. You know, just to keep, you know, it's important to have people happy at work, but also it helps with staff retention. We even give travel benefits to our employees. They each get a flight per year, which is a big thing for Fijians. We work in the travel space a lot, so we want them to be familiar with, you know, what an aeroplane looks like and so on. So yeah, they're very well looked after. And if you ever come across to check out the premises, you'll see most of them are located in very nice areas.
Thanks, Anthony. Well, unfortunately, that brings our event to a close. Thank you so much for all the engagement from the audience with those questions. I hope you enjoyed the session. We will be sending around a short survey to get your insights, and I'd really appreciate if you complete that. So wishing everyone a wonderful day ahead. Stay safe, stay well, and see you next time.
Thanks, Sharon. And thanks to
Thank you,
Matchbox
Sharon, and
Thank you.
everyone.
Council.